In today's video, I'm going to be creating my own palette. By the end of the video, I'll have talked you through exactly my thought processes that go into creating my 12 colour watercolour sketching palette for all things loose, urban and landscape sketching. Along the way, we'll look at the properties of colours, tubes versus pans, what kind of palette you should choose. I'll also tell you that if I was stripping it down to say 3 colours or 6 or 7 colours, exactly what those colours would be. And like I said, by the end, you'll have a great idea of how you can go about the amazing process of selecting your own 12 colour palette, if that's what you're looking to do, which it probably is, because otherwise, why would you have clicked on this video? Well, maybe just to see me ramble on, eh? So with that, let's get started. Let's get thinking about our perfect watercolour palette. First question is, why bother at all to make your own palette? There are hundreds of pre-curated palettes out there. Well, the problem with those is they're a bit generalistic, and as artists we tend to have a focus. That focus might be a particular subject. We're a portrait artist, so we want Potter's pink and we want some earthy skin tones in there. Or we absolutely love abstract granulation, and we just can't find palettes which really cater to our exact needs. Starting with a pre-curated palette is a fantastic idea. Things like the Cotman palette is a good selection. Then there are bigger palettes by Meaden, for example, who have like 40 plus colours. That's too many for me, but it gives you a lot of exploration at a very cheap price. So it's a good starting point, but then soon enough you'll want to develop. And that's what today is, of course, all about. I would recommend, if you have the finances, to use tubes and not pans. With tubes you get a lot more paint for your money. They're a little bit more expensive than filled pans, but you can fill 4 or 5 pans from one big tube and you only get one pan with your pan. So if you can afford tubes, all you need to do is squeeze them out, leave them to dry for a couple of days, and you've got a perfect tube of your own paint ready to refill and refill. Brilliant if you've got a nice settled palette and you love your colours as well. What kind of palette should you use? Great question. There are loads out there. My favourite are the metal palettes with a little thumb loop on the back. Means you can stand up, you can sit down. They have 2 big mixing areas, but they're also nice and compact, and frankly they last forever. There are cheap plastic ones as well, but the metal ones aren't very expensive. Mine cost me £8 or £9. I think the plastic one's £4 or £5. And then you can get some really fancy ones. But for me, the benefit's just not there. So stick with something cheap, cheerful, portable, but also that will last you a long time, because the palette will last a lot longer than the paints, I hope. And with that, we can dive into actually picking our colours. Now, I said along the way we're going to build different sizes of palette, and we're going to start right at the bottom with 3 colours. And I wouldn't put too much thought into this. What I would say is 3 punchy primary colours. That's a nice blue, red and yellow. Now, there's a good question here to be asked about what do I mean by punchy? Well, all I mean is a colour which stands up really well, is really strong and lovely, and that you enjoy. And I would suggest doing some very simple swatches to pick your 3 colours, just like this. With those 3 colours, if they're nice and punchy, you'll be able to get rich tones. You'll be able to add lots of water and sort of temper them down, and you'll be able to mix them together to get deep, dark mixes and secondary colours as well. In essence, we know that if we create our colour wheel with our 3 primary colours, we can basically make any, well, literally, we should be able to make any colour. Strictly, that's not exactly true, which we'll get onto as we build our palette. But a 3 colour palette is extremely flexible. And I actually made a video, my most popular video on YouTube, with just 4 colours. And so if we're doing 4 colours, it would be those 3 punchy primary colours, and then I'd add an earthy tone or a dark kind of neutral tone. You can find that video just here, and paint along with your new 4 colour palette. For me, my punchy primaries are going to be Azo Yellow, which is a nice, slightly punchy, well saturated but not over the top yellow. Perylene Scarlet, which is a lovely rich red. Ultramarine Blue, a really classic blue. And I'm really looking forward to trying these out. As you can see, to pick these colours, all I did was just take my colours that I have and just quickly swatch them out, comparing them side by side. You can, if you don't have lots of tubes, and I wouldn't recommend buying lots of tubes. I'm just very fortunate to have the platform I do and therefore have lots of tubes of paint. But if you don't, you can get things called dot cards. Dot cards are very cheap, £10–20 in this country. And from Daniel Smith, for example, that gets you about 250 colours that you can try out and compare. And you can actually do quite a lot of paintings from just those dots of paint. You might surprise yourself. And along the way, you'll be able to identify which colours you do really want and which actually can wait, or you can stick with student grade paints. Now, so we've got our punchy primaries, and one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the idea of cool versus warm, because this is important for when we upgrade to our 6-colour palette. Our 6-colour palette is where we pair our primaries. So the idea here is that cool colours, they go more towards greens and blues, and the warm colours are more towards orange and red. So whilst we talk about primary colours, very rarely is a primary colour a pure primary. Normally it has a bias or a sort of hue which is a little bit cool or a little bit warm. Now, in picking out our 3 punchy primary colours, what we have inadvertently done is picked either a warm or a cool colour amongst that, because every colour tends to lean one way or the other. So, for example, if we take a look at the colours that I swatched out when I was picking, you'll notice that within the blues, for example, some of them feel a little more green. They're a bit cooler. Greeny blue is the cooler end of the spectrum. Some of them are a little bit more red, a little purple. That's the kind of warmer end of the spectrum. And it's the same in our reds. They can feel like they've got a little bit of bluey green in them, moving them cooler, or they can feel a bit more orange, a bit more warm like the sun, moving them hotter. Those hotter colours advance in our painting. They feel closer, and those cooler colours feel more distant. And when we mix these colours, we get very dramatically different results. Even if I take ultramarine blue and mix it with azo yellow and my perylene scarlet, and then I do the same azo yellow and perylene scarlet, but I use phthalo blue, dramatically different purples, neutrals and greens emerging. And all we did is change the blue from one end of the colour spectrum or the temperature spectrum to the other. So for my 6-colour palette, all I'm going to do is pair my primaries. So across from my ultramarine, a slightly warmer blue, is going to be a nice and cool manganese blue hue. Across from my perylene scarlet, I'm going to go quite a long way away from that towards quinacridone magenta, almost a pinky purple. And then this is where I go off the rails, because I know that I don't like those cooler yellows, like lemon yellows and nickel azo yellow. I don't use them. So instead I'm going to go very earthy. Now I would here pick a quinacridone gold, but quinacridone's coming later. So instead I'm going with Mars yellow, which is a bit like an ochre, which is a very common colour used by a lot of people. So we have our 6-colour palette. We want to make that 7 or 8 colours. Let's add some earths and some neutrals. And earths and neutrals are this huge, diverse range of colours. And really, we're talking about everything from quite bright oranges through to deep browns, through to neutrals, greys, and blue-tinged blacks. There's such a diverse range. Again, you can just see I've swatched out a few here. And this is where things get very personal, and there's just too many to choose from sometimes. What I would suggest doing is picking 2 which work really well together. So for me, I know quinacridone sienna and indigo work absolutely fantastically. If we mix them together, we get everything from orange, brown, deep blue to almost black. So diverse, so varied from just 2 lovely colours that I have to include them. Now, there are lots of other colours we could have included, and that's great because when we go to our 10 to 12 colours, we've now basically got room for maybe 4 convenience colours or luxury colours. So convenience colours are basically secondary colours. Secondary colours are the ones we get from mixing primaries. So yellow and blue make green. We don't need to include a green in our palette, it's lazy, and it's also great fun. If you're a botanical sketcher or a landscape sketcher, get some greens in there, make life easy. And you can also start incorporating the kind of luxury effects and other watercolour effects within that, which we'll talk about in just a second. Similarly, if you're a portrait sketcher, you might want to move into the pinks, the earths, the browns, the neutrals, to get that full range of skin tones across all sorts of ethnicities. If you are an urban sketcher, then you might want to get those punchy, fun, bright, granulating, funky colours. And with that, let's jump in and let's start talking about those watercolour effects and how that's going to finish up my little palette. So the first thing to do is just look at how when we swatch a colour, we get all sorts of different things going on. First we have the mass tone. That's the kind of hue, the basic colour itself. Then we can create a gradient. We can do that in a couple of different ways. And that shows us everything from really rich through to the really pale version of that particular pigment that we can create. Then it gets more fun. We can look at wet on wet. And this is where we can explore, does something, have a natural texture? Does it flow across water? Does it sink? Does it granulate? Granulation being where big particles in the pigment settle on the page and cause a really lovely texture. Fascinating examples of that are the Lunar range from Daniel Smith or the super granulating range by Schmink, but all different brands tend to have a few heavily granulating colours. My favourites are Lunar Earth, Lunar Black. Moonglow is a fantastic one, but this is where we fall into another trap. Moonglow is a colour which has a fugitive property. So it's important to look on the back of our colours and see, are they Lightfast? I haven't swatched any today, I believe, that aren't Lightfast. Someone in the comments can correct me if I've got that wrong. But those colours are the ones where if we hang them on a wall within a few months, the colour will have gone fugitive, run away, and you'll have a fundamentally different image. Fine if you're just using a sketchbook, but in the modern era of such diverse pigments, we don't need to be stuck still using those ones. So just check your pigments are Lightfast before you dive in and use them. Next we have transparency. Now, broadly speaking, I'm of the school where if we're painting with watercolours, they should be transparent. When they start getting opaque and you can't see through them, you lose so much about what makes watercolours magic. I'm also of the school where I say actually everything is a flexible rule, and I love, for example, lavender. We can see here if I cover up a couple of lines with quinacridone sienna, very transparent. Lavender, it starts to cover those lines. Then I come in with white gouache. Gouache is opaque, almost completely covers those lines. And in a couple of layers, it would totally cover those lines. Whereas a lovely transparent colour will glaze. You can actually mix the colours by layering on top because you can always see through them. So the light is mixing through those layers. And with that, I can finish off my palette. And the last colours going in are going to be graphite grey for that very grey neutral touch when I'm just feeling too lazy to mix. I'm going to add in a green apatite genuine because it's a rich earthy green which heavily granulates, and that's not something I can get from just mixing my other colours. They just don't granulate in quite the same lovely way. Going to have my lavender as an opaque colour, and then as a kind of little nudge to having a bit of fun, I'm going to try quinacridone coral. Super bright, really in your face colour. And let's see if I get on with it or not. But that's what having an extended palette is about. Having that flexibility to have a bit of fun, play with stuff. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I have loads of other ideas I'd love to try out. And that is the final step to curating your own palette. You create something you think will work. You play with it, give it some time, get used to the colours, and then you get to adapt it, change it. Not only might you have not made the perfect choices, there probably are no perfect choices, and you probably changed your ways of painting, your thoughts, you've discovered new things. So continue to adapt, explore, experiment. If you enjoy this, then like, subscribe, let me know what's in your palette, let me know what you like or don't like in my palette, and I'll see you in the next video. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.